Questions from the audience. George Thomas, right here on the front row.
Thank you for taking my question. I appreciate
Yes.
that. You know, I'm all for bills being paid for, and we should, and bills especially passed by the legislature. But isn't it the pay-go proposition? Isn't that just in the mind of a politician just a tax increase?
Everyone hear the question? Okay, the question is, isn't the pay-go proposition that Bob mentioned earlier, in essence, a tax increase?
Well, the whole notion behind pay-go is that if it is a tax increase, you have to identify it. In other words, if you say it's just a tax, you have to show where the money's going to come from. It's a business proposition, it's a balance sheet, right? So you got to make a cut over here, or take the money from here, or whatever. Or if you want a tax increase, you're going to increase taxes to show this. Because what happens now in the process is everybody says, well, I want this and I want that, but nobody thinks about how to pay for it, and hence we're in the challenge we are now. But by forcing that in a pretty disciplined way, Congress has the pay-go system, a number of that moved in the right direction, that Panetta put in place, and some others. It is something that the Blue Dogs have been pushing for and frustrated some of the folks that want tax increases. So we've put some pretty tight language in that regard in our initiative for the pay-go.
Well, how does it work? Well, how does it work? One concern I have about pay-go is if you don't want the tax increase that George is talking about, but you say, I want to create this new thing, and the way I'm going to fund it is I'm going to cut something else. Right. You have to specifically say what you're going to cut. Yeah. Right down to the department, or just say I generally want to cut the department.
You got to be very specific.
Because I think.
No, because if it's just broadly stated, it doesn't solve it.
Right. Exactly. That's my concern.
So then,
that's solving it. Your point.
Initiative is like throwing a stone into the water. You know, there's going to be ripples going all the way out. So if this pay-go thing, and again, I'm going to go right back to, because I see this is going to be this definition of marijuana. The taxes. If we go on the backside, because you equate that to alcohol, we're losing our shirts on policing alcohol. When you look at the court costs, the police costs, and everything that goes with it, the taxes by far do not even cover what we get in terms of costs associated with tax revenue to cover alcohol. So now, on the ballot initiative that's coming up right now, if you're using the pay-go system, we're going to get a whole lot of tax revenue according to these people. Are they going to show us all the other costs that go into it and show the net cost to the taxpayer in terms of what it's going to cost to regulate this?
Other questions? Yes, sir, right in the back. I can't read your name tag from here, sorry about that. Hi, Jeff.
I just have a comment about marijuana legalization. I believe that whether legalized or not, the users will continue to use marijuana, and which makes drug dealers a lot of money. And like the gentleman said earlier, money is power. And so some of this power is going to these drug dealers. And I just think with the state budget crisis, there could be something done that would either bring in some tax revenue or something, because I just think that not doing anything would be worse than
let me pose this first, and let me ask it as a question to Stephen Nooch. You say that with making marijuana illegal as it is now makes drug dealers rich. I argue that if we tax marijuana, the drug dealers are going to be rich, because the people aren't going to want to pay the tax on the drug. They're going to go buy it from the dealer. The dealer's still going to be there. Steve, your response to his...
I've never known a cartel to pay their taxes. And most of the medicinal marijuana we're hearing about is coming straight from Mexico. That's been proven pretty conclusively. We do have a local market that's coming out of Mexico by and large. The cartels even control the growing in California. The Santa Barbara fire was started by a surrogate grower hired by the cartels, because Santa Barbara's got good conditions for that. You know what? There's a moral equation to this marijuana legalization thing. This harms people. It harms people. It alters their state of mind. We are going to increase drug driving, not drunk driving, drug driving tremendously if we legalize marijuana. Right now, yeah, there's still people out there who are engaging in smoking marijuana, but there's going to be a lot less if it's illegal, a lot less if society disapproves of it, and a lot less if you can at least be cited for being in possession of a small amount and put in prison for selling large amounts. So it's like any other vice out there. Have we ever gotten rid of prostitution? No, we haven't. Should we, through law enforcement and the courts, suppress it? Yes, we should. Same analogy there. This false concept, and many politicians are buying into it, particularly in Oakland, I believe here in LA too, that this is going to be a tax nirvana is false. It's a false sinecure. We will pay a price, and it might be your brother, your father, your mother was killed by some idiot smoking marijuana, and who's going to pay for that loss? And that's been repeated hundreds and thousands of times all over California.
Nooch, what about the argument, though, that maybe he's making that, well, what we're doing is putting drug dealers, by legalizing it, we're putting those marijuana dealers out of business so there won't be the marijuana dealer. In fact, the city of LA will be the marijuana distributor. Go ahead.
Well, this is it's a good question because it's something that you really gotta start, and you gotta start making a bunch of hypotheses. How to do exactly what you want to do, okay? And then on the surface, it looks like the right answer. But as Steve said, it's gonna take you nowhere. And the first premise is we have a sociological question to ask as a society as to whether or not we want to legalize something like marijuana. No great society has ever been created on a vice. One. Okay? Two, the difference between alcohol and marijuana are stark. People constantly compare, hey, it's no different than alcohol. Yes, it is. I venture to guess that probably 40% of the people in this room had a drink last night. But excuse my French, but I doubt very seriously if anybody here got wasted last night by having a drink. But if you pick up a joint, light it, and inhale it, what are you doing? By nature of the term itself, what are you doing? You're getting high. When you poured your glass of wine last night, you were not getting high. So the intent, first off, when you grab that joint or you grab that drink, are completely different. So they are completely different types of drugs. And then, so now on a society level, we have to decide whether or not we want to legitimize and legalize getting high. Because that's what you do when you take marijuana. Now, let's go back to the question that you just asked about the taxing issue. If we're going to tax marijuana, it's going to have to be an ad valorem tax, as you would do with petroleum. That means you're going to tax it at the producer, which would be the growing field, so that you would make sure you've got your tax up front, because you know, like Steve said, these guys are crooks. Cartels don't pay taxes. End users do, you guys. So now, we're going to grow it governmentally, sanction it, and get taxes paid right there at the spot. So now, I have Hills Brothers in this pot, and I have Folgers in this pot. I dare you, when I switch them around under the table, to tell me the difference between Hills Brothers and Folgers, because what's going to happen is that the distributor is going to buy a pound here and 20 pounds here, where he's not paying tax, and put that tax revenue that the government never knows about in his pocket.
I want to come at this briefly just from another vantage point, not as a proponent of the initiative, but I too am very, very glad that you asked the question, and I'll tell you why. Because about 6 or 7 minutes ago, I was looking around this room, and I was noticing that many of the young people, and actually a lot of the older people as well, were thinking to themselves, is this really the best way I could have spent 2 hours on a Friday afternoon listening to these 5 old political hacks, no offense intended to any of us, okay, to all of us, talking about, legislative review and court analysis of initiatives. The problem with political process, for anyone but political freaks, is that it's not very interesting. And what this young man did, which I think was a very, very valuable service, is reminded us that when we're talking about the initiative process, we're not just talking about politics, we're not just talking about legalese, we're talking about real-world issues. And whether the issue is marijuana, whether the issue is violent crime, whether it's taxes or healthcare or immigration or environmental protection, this is how these issues get decided in California.